descendants, but for us. Now, if you had to guess, what would these quotes have been? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? These quotes were made in the 1960s, friends. And we can see that none of us have the prospect of immortality at this time, some 50 years later. But where does the Bible encourage us to put our trust and our hope? We're going to go to our first scripture. It's going to be Psalms 118. And when we get there, we're going to consider verse 8. Again, that's Psalms 118:8. And that reads, "It is better to take refuge in Jehovah than to trust in humans." Now, Psalm tells us that we need to take refuge in Jehovah and not earthly man. But what does that really mean? Obviously, refuge, the short answer, is to get to shelter. But refuge is more than that. Refuge is a safe place. We can shelter in science and be let down in the short term and in the long term. Or we can get to a safe place trusting in our Father, Jehovah God, and His Word, the Bible. Well, from these few points we've covered, we can see that we can't hope that science will end death and aging. They haven't delivered on anything as far as that. But, on the other hand, the Bible tells us the cause and the solution to death and aging. And along those lines, what about Jehovah's works? When scientists want to observe something they cannot see, they look at the effects around the object they're looking at. And that works for us also, because we cannot see our Heavenly Father, Jehovah. But let's consider Romans 1:20 and see how we can learn about him. That's Romans 1:20. Says, "For his invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onward, because they are perceived by the things made, even his eternal power and Godship, so that they are inexcusable." All we have to do is look outside at the abundance of plant life and animal life, or the smallest atom to our sun, which provides energy, are all amazing examples of Jehovah's power. Also, we have the example of the small single-celled animals, all the way up to the blue whale, which is the largest animal on the planet. And science is merely man's attempt to understand the goings-on of the world around them. And it's a way to track Jehovah's power, how it's used. But how do you feel about that? Is there a solid basis for resting our hope on the future, on science, or on the Bible? It's true. Science has had some commendable achievements, things that are very useful to humankind. Things like vaccines for common diseases that don't allow the flu or common cold to run wild and kill thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Even advancements in prosthetic limbs. Man has figured out a way for the impulses from the human brain to control these prosthetic limbs, giving the user a more natural feel. But not only medical achievements, we have things like robots. Robots have moved from science fiction to science fact. We now have robots that explore the deepest parts of the ocean and can reach as far as Mars to extend human knowledge without putting lives at risk. Now, my first personal favorite is a robot that cleans your floors. I used to have one at the house. Friends, you have not lived until you hit a button and the little robot vacuums the entire floor. It's great. Speaking of time-consuming jobs, modern inventions have cut out some tedious and time-consuming jobs. Everyone probably, again, thinks about robots on the assembly line and the jobs they replace. But let's consider a couple other jobs that we may not have even considered. How many of us like to bowl? Some of us like to bowl good. Did you know that one time there was a 5-man crew that would set up pins? And they were called bowling alley pin setters. That would have been a tedious job. Or how many of us actually like our alarm clocks, but there used to be people that would walk around and tap on glass and get people up in the morning. They were called human alarm clocks. And I'm sure some of the young people here have seen the movie Frozen. The opening scene has ice cutters working, and that was a job that was needed before refrigeration. And a couple other ones that I thought were neat were like lamp lighters for street lights. Some of us may remember switchboard operators. And then the last one was a resurrectionist. That job description may change in the future, but for right now, it was a person that would exhume cadavers and bring them for medical research. And these are all jobs that were tedious, time-consuming, and that science was able to do away with. And not only jobs, some inventions help save us time. I'm sure all of us, everybody sitting here has at least one cell phone, if not two. They're great. They save you. You can email, you can text, you can picture message, you can post, tweet. Any young people, if I missed anything, let me know after the meeting. They're great for cutting down time, saving time with mail and things like that. Also, you can handle business without missing work, which we all know we enjoy that. But what happens when you combine phones and cars? We're going to get to that in a minute. Cars are a fairly new invention. The last 100 years or so. Cars, like phones, allow us to get more things done with less time. But there's a downside to combining them. Science and technology doesn't always think out the whole process. They don't understand that we make a couple things, they can sometimes combine and cause a new set of problems. Well, cars are great for getting us from point A to point B. Millions of people are, cars are great for getting us, they move millions of people daily, but hundreds of thousands are killed in car accidents every year, and millions are hurt. And when you combine cars and phones, it gets even worse. It's estimated that 3,000 to 5,000 people are killed each day, well, each year, due to texting and driving. And another 300,000 each year are hurt due to texting and driving. And it's said that it's researched that when a texting driver is driving at 55 miles an hour, his eyes are off the road for 4.6 seconds. That may not sound like a lot, but 4.6 seconds at 55 miles an hour, you can cover a football field. So if you're not paying attention for that period of time, a lot can happen. I'm sure that when phones and cars were invented, scientists had no idea the toll they could take on human life. Those are just two examples of inventions that affect our daily lives. But what about on a larger scale? Scientists have tampered with the environment. They've played God, so to speak, with the ecology. And the results are changes to our vocabulary. Things like acid rain, greenhouse effect, and deforestation, just to name a few. If you think the words sound bad, the meaning is even worse. Acid rain is defined as rain, sleet, containing high concentration of acid-forming chemicals. Could you imagine being out, get caught in the rain, and things around you start to die from the acid in the rain? Or how about deforestation? Deforestation, it takes away land, or takes away vegetation at an alarming rate. 2.4 acres per second, 149 acres per minute, 214,000 acres per day. And it's not only vegetation, but there are species lost in this process too. 137 a day, over 50,000 in a year. No wonder the Bible talks about these ones in Revelation 11:18. We're going to consider that. Revelation 11:18. Says, but the nations became wrathful, and their own wrath came. And the appointed time came for the dead to be judged and to be rewarded. Your slaves, the prophets, and the holy ones, and those who fear your name, and the small and the great. And here's the point. And to bring to ruin those ruining the earth. Another translation reads that last part of the verse, to destroy those destroying the earth. But my favorite translation was the Byington, where it says to make havoc for the havoc makers. Havoc means great destruction or devastation or ruinous damage. And in the Middle Ages, the word havoc was a command for armies to destroy everything in their path. Now, in a real sense, science has pillaged the earth and its resources, like the forest, like the water that we drink, and even man himself. For example, pollution in the UK has gotten so bad that approximately 17 million people, about 30% of the island's population, have different ailments due to pollution, and they don't even realize it. We've considered some examples of science, mankind's science effect, apart from Jehovah God. But what about when science and the Bible cross paths? And we know that the Bible is not a science book per se, but it shows that the Bible knowledge comes from a higher source than mankind. The Bible was written over a period of 1,600 years by about, it was finished about 2,000 years ago by about 40 different human writers. But the interesting thing is that it was never tainted by human misconceptions of the time. So, at the time, science may have wondered how the earth was supported. We've all heard different examples of the 4 elephants on the back of a sea turtle, or possibly a god. But let's consider Job 26 and see what the actual answer is, how the earth was supported. It says he stretches out the northern sky over empty space, suspending the earth upon nothing. So some 3,000 years ago, Jehovah had written down that the earth was suspended upon nothing. But this is clearly long before science was able to confirm that. Until that time, the earth was thought to be flat. That's another thing, that people believed that the earth was flat. And if you went far enough, you would fall off the edge. But in Isaiah 40:22, we'll just paraphrase that, it speaks of Jehovah as dwelling above the circle of the earth. And that word circle can also be translated sphere. And that was written 2,700 years ago. And what's amazing about this is the Bible was not influenced by prevailing thought of the time. It was always accurate. Now we're going to move on to the water cycle and to consider Ecclesiastes 1:7. It says, all the streams flow into the sea, and yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the streams flow, there they return, so as to flow again. So in 30 words, the Bible completely describes the water cycle. Humans knew something was going on because the seas and oceans never overflowed. But they thought that the water just ran off the flat edges of the earth. But what was really going on was that the sun pulled moisture up from the oceans at enormous rates, and that created clouds and moved over the land, and it rained or precipitated, and that would run back to the seas of the ocean, thus not allowing anything to overflow. But again, our Father Jehovah was right all along in the Bible. The scientific information revealed in the Bible before human discovery proves that the Bible is a reliable and divinely inspired book. And it also gives us a basis for resting our hope. The proof of divine inspiration helps us to do a couple things. First of all, it helps us to have a bright outlook for the future. It gives us a solid basis for hope. Who is the only one who can give us the hope we need? Is it science or the Bible? The Bible was given to us by our Creator Jehovah, and we know that He is our true source of hope. Let's consider Romans 15:4.